Hi everyone, I'm just going to continue on where I left off yesterday. So if you didn't watch yesterday's lecture, the Socrative does cover yesterday and today. So make sure let's get those watched. And then I also will mention little things along the way that might not be in writing on the slides. So definitely important to watch the lecture. Obviously, if you're watching it right now, you're abiding by that. But if you know anyone that's just not watching it and then not doing good on the Socratives, that's probably why. So we talked a lot about innate and learned behavior. Innate behavior, remember, is what an animal is born with. And learned behavior obviously is shaped by the environment and by experience. And so I went through, I'm going to go back. So learned behaviors, habituation, which is a desensitization, imprinting, and you can see this picture right here. That's the imprinting. And a lot of animals will imprint on their mothers, but you can definitely see a physical response to imprinting with geese and with ducks. So that's why we use those as our classic example of imprinting. Cognitive map is where an animal will associate a certain landmark with where something was left. And I talked to you about these pine cones and then the wasp nests and how experiments have been done where the pine cones get moved and the wasp will go to the pine cones but not the actual nest. So that's just using landmarks. And it's just interesting, I thought, to know that wasps, we do that as humans all the time, but wasps will also do that. Right, and then associative learning. So if any of you have taken psychology, you have learned about classical conditioning and then operant conditioning. So I want to go over those two real quick. Associative learning is just associating one stimulus with another. And so classical conditioning is going to be an association of an arbitrary stimulus with a particular outcome. And so what that means is there's no like punishment or anything like that. It's just well, let me just talk about Pavlov's dog. So if you're in psychology, you've already heard of this. The dog, every time the dog was fed, a bell would ring. And the dog was fed and the bell would ring. And the dog was fed and the bell would ring. Or the ringing and then being fed, I think is the order it went into. I don't teach psychology. I took it in college, but I know that there's a bell and there's food. So pretty soon when Pavlov took the food away, every time he rang the bell, the dogs would salivate because they associated getting food with the ringing of the bell. So that's classical conditioning. Operant conditioning is very similar to classical conditioning, but there's more of a reward and punishment involved. And so we see a lot of times when they do research on addiction and put mice in these cages and they have a lever where they can push the lever and they get administered like a drug like cocaine. That's where they can really study the reward aspect of behavior, and that an animal will continue to do something if it is rewarded, and an animal will stop doing something if it is punished. So just two types of associative learning. Right, and then we have cognition. A lot of animals, well, all animals are going to some extent, display cognition, which is a little bit higher level of learning that involves awareness, reasoning, recollection, and judgment. And this is seen with chimpanzees and with crows. It's really interesting to see the chimpanzee cognition studies. They can do things like if you give them a tube with a rock at the bottom, assuming that the rock is less dense. Well, depending on what kind of rock it is or what kind of device it is. So if you put some kind of device in the bottom of a tube, the chimpanzee will eventually figure out, if you give them water with it, that they can put water into the tube and that the device will rise as you put water into the tube. So just a lot of awareness and reasoning and problem solving behavior that's seen in some of these animals that can have a little bit more higher level thinking. It's also interesting, crows are really interesting in their cognition. They've seen crows that will perch on traffic lights and they'll hold like a nut that they want to have cracked, and they have learned to drop the nut at just the right time to where a car will run over it and crack it for them. So that's pretty cool. And then we have social learning, learning by observing others. And the example of this is the Vervet monkey, learning the correct use of alarm calls. So learning from others. So here's an example of learned animal behaviors. There's lots of videos, so if you kind of want to take a little screenshot of this, and if you want to watch them later, especially the amazing intelligence of crows, I don't want to make you watch that just because I know that some people have a lot of trouble just getting the bare minimum done for the classes because you're having a hard time focusing. But just so you know, these are some pretty cool videos of crows and chimpanzees in their learning capabilities if you're interested in watching them. Let me know if you watch some of them and let me know what you think. I'd be curious to know what you think of it. All right, another behavior is foraging. This is food obtaining behavior. Obviously, it's an innate to want food, but a lot of times foraging behavior can be learned, is learned from others in the population. And foraging behavior is just recognizing, searching for, and capturing and consuming food. And obviously, you're going to want to minimize costs and maximize benefits. And an example of minimizing costs and maximizing benefits is, of course, I'm going to talk about bees. So when bees are born, they have different stages of jobs within the hive. So only the females work, in case you're wondering. The males don't really do much of anything. They're just there for mating reasons, which is why they kick them out. As you heard in my last lecture, they're going to kick them out in the months of November, December, January, because all the males do is just sit and eat, and they're just kind of a waste of space. So the females, when they're born, they take on different jobs depending on how old they are. The oldest female bees will be the foragers. And the reason for that is when a bee goes and forages, it is going to have a lot of damage done to its wings, and it has the risk of dying. So the oldest bees serve as the foragers because they're the ones that are that they're most willing to sacrifice, basically. So definitely want to maximize benefits and minimize costs. And so what this graph is showing you is an experiment that was done to see how crows are going to balance the costs and benefits of their foraging. So this crow right here is picking up snails from a little watery area with a bunch of rocks. So he's picking up snails and dropping them because he needs, this crow, he or she needs the snail to crack so he can eat the little slug snail that's on the inside. So what this is showing you is the preferred drop height by crows is where there's a balance between energy costs and the benefits, where they don't have to fly quite as high, but that they don't have to keep dropping the snail over and over again. Here, they have to drop the snail less times, but the height they have to fly for that is a little bit too high. So this is the preferred drop height, where they don't have to fly too high, but then they don't have to keep dropping the snail over and over again. So just a balance of energy, costs, and benefits in foraging behavior. All animals are going to do that. And so we'll move on from foraging behavior to mating behavior and mate choice. Sexual selection obviously is a behavior that's going to be shaped by natural selection and evolution, although different animals are going to do it in a different way. So we're going to kind of break that down and see how sexual selection works in different groups of animals. So sexual selection has to do with seeking and attracting mates, choosing and competing for mates. So we have 4 different types: promiscuous, monogamous, polygamous, and polyandry. So promiscuous means that males and females each have different partners. Both males and females are going to be kind of showy. Showy can have to do with fluffiness of fur, color of feathers, color of skin, color of fur, anything like that. And then care for each other is going to be none. So, and care for young is going to be none. A really good example for promiscuous animals are going to be bonobos. They are crazy. So if you want to, I mean, don't like look up crazy stuff about them, but I would just look up the promiscuity of bonobos. It's nuts, man. Like literally. All right, monogamous animals. That is a one to one male, one female, and they're going to be similar in their structure and the way they look. And there's going to be a lot of care for each other as partners and a lot of care for the young. An example of monogamous, I mean, there's a long list of them. There's types of wolves, beavers. There's a long list of monogamous animals. And then I would assume humans would be put into this category as well. Polygamous, there's one male with many females. The male is usually showy, and the male shows little care for the females and little care for the young. And the classic example for polygamous would be lions. So you can think of the male lion as being very showy, and he has his group of females, like 4 or 5 females that he's going to mate with. All right, polyandry is one female with many males, and the female's going to be showy, and the male actually, she like never sees him again. And the example that I want to use for polyandry is going to be our honeybees. So our queen bee, she's going to be real pretty. She's long, she's kind of an amber color, and she's a lot bigger than all the other bees. Really nice looking. What she will do when she's born is she'll go on what's called a mating flight. And so she'll fly out of the hive to what's called a drone yard. The drones are the male bees. So all the male bees are hanging out in trees, and she will mate with about 40 different drones. They will mate mid-flight, so while they're in the air. I usually show a video of this, actually. God, I hope we go back to school so I can talk to you guys about bees, because I'm obsessed. So when she's mating with the drone mid-air, he actually becomes like disemboweled whenever they're finished. And I have this video that I'm going to show you. No matter what, I'm showing you this video. And he actually dies right after mating. So that's why, at least with bees, the male, there's none. And so she'll mate with about 40 different males, and she'll come back to the hive, and she'll have enough sperm stored inside of her so she can lay eggs for the next 5 years. Bees are so cool. I love them. Right, and I've already given you some examples, but some monogamous seagulls are monogamous. Polygynous goes with polygamous. You have your moose here that does that. And then I'm not exactly sure, I'm embarrassed to say, since I don't make these slides, Mrs. Chow does. I don't know what kind of bird this is, but there are birds that display polyandry, one female with multiple males. So I'll have to find out what kind of bird that is. Right, and then ornaments are going to correlate with general health and vitality. You guys already know this, so it's going to have to do with size of certain parts of the animal, size of these antennae coming out here, size of feathers, color of feathers. Obviously, the more vibrant the animal, the larger and more vibrant the body parts, the more the better they are to mate with, because that means that they're more healthy. Okay, next behavior is agonistic behavior. Agonistic behavior are threats, rituals, and sometimes combat. This is to settle disputes over resources. So it could be a territory dispute, it could be a mating dispute, and basically it's usually going to be two male animals, although females can display agonistic behavior also. But really it's just a fighting between two members of the same species in order to win territory, food, or mates. And so just kind of, I know I'm jumping around to a bunch of different topics, but I'm just hitting the high points here on animal behavior. It's interesting that a lot of behaviors can be directed by genes, and we know that with the whole nature versus nurture debate. A lot of people, you're born the way you're born, with your DNA, and a lot of behaviors are dictated by your DNA. They can also be shaped by the environment. But this is kind of an interesting behavior displayed by prairie voles. And it says that prairie vole, their mating and pair bond formation behavior is under strong genetic control. And so prairie voles are monogamous, obviously, if there's a pair bond formation. And it was noticed that prairie voles, they fall in love. And so scientists wanted to know, what is this that's making them fall in love? And through a series of experiments that I don't even know exactly what led up to this point, but what they did was they injected their brains with a certain chemical that would unravel the DNA that was responsible for the production of antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. And they found that the more the genes for antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin were expressed, the stronger the pair bond that would form between the two prairie voles. So just to show that the genes that are responsible for the formation of ADH and oxytocin really had a very strong impact on the pair bond formation in prairie voles. So kind of cool. And this is just showing you right here that when the DNA for oxytocin was expressed more, there was more of a monogamous formation, bond formation between two prairie voles. Well, when they went a little further and they suppressed the DNA that was responsible for coding for oxytocin, that there was actually promiscuous behavior. So pretty cool. So ADH and oxytocin are responsible for that. All right, trying to jumping to something else, a behavior called altruistic behavior. Altruism is very interesting because for an individual, the goal is survival and reproduction. But we have this thing called altruism where an individual will actually sacrifice themselves for the good of the population that they live in. And so we kind of want to take a little look at this. And so what's going to happen is the individual's fitness is going to be reduced, but the fitness of the others in the population are going to be increased. And we see this in bee societies when a bee stings a human or a bear or a mouse or something like that, that bee dies. And so while that's not good for the bee, that's going to increase the fitness of the others in the population. So that bee basically like sacrifices itself. With the naked mole rats, what you see right here is a mole rat actually feeding babies. But the thing is that this mole rat probably isn't the mother to those babies, probably is like an aunt or something like that. So mole rats will actually like breastfeed or nurse babies that are not theirs to help with the survival of others in the population, which is very nice of them. So we have two vocab words, inclusive fitness and kin selection. Kin selection is a type of inclusive fitness. So inclusive fitness is the total effect, producing own offspring, helping close relatives. Kin selection is a type of inclusive fitness that's been molded by natural selection where altruistic behavior is displayed that's going to enhance the reproductive success of relatives. An example of this would be if an animal senses that there's a predator nearby and then it makes a call to all the other individuals in the population that the predator is nearby. It's bringing attention to itself, so it's more likely going to be attacked, but it has helped the survival of all the others in the population. All right, and I'm not going to play that video. If you want to look up this video, you can. That's basically all I have for this chapter for animal behavior. If you can take your Socrative, if you do have an issue taking the Socrative right after taking notes because you need some time to let it all digest, and usually email me so we can talk about that, so we can talk about what I can do to better support you. But that's all you have for today, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Well, I'll send you something tomorrow. I won't see you till Friday. All right, have a good day.